weather, it's a perfect night for a virtual tour. One of the advantages of a virtual tour, I suppose, I think it's 23 degrees outside right now. Anyway, thanks for joining us. If you look at my virtual background here, in fact, there it is there. I'm coming to you live from the virtual Opera House Cafe on Shenango Street, 24 Shenango Street in Binghamton, right across the street from the Strand Theater. When we were, Linda mentioned that I'm with the Preservation Association. We had a meeting early this year to talk about, ideas for doing walking tours around Binghamton. And of course, we held the meeting at Water Street Brewing Company on Water Street. And so we're sitting there thinking about what we could do for possible walking tours.
Yeah.
It occurred to us that, gosh, what would be better than a walk exploring the local brew pubs in Binghamton? So we got started to plan that. And then all of a sudden the pandemic came along and had to cancel all our plans. At that point, we decided we would go virtual with it. And the nice thing about going virtual is now we're not limited by distance. Things don't have to be within walking distance. Plus, we can cover a lot more information. We have some neat graphics, nice old vintage photos. So I think we've put together an interesting program here. Getting into this, we found out real quickly that there's a lot of cool history associated with brewing in Broome County. And so hopefully you'll find it interesting. Let me just remind everybody once again, if your audio is turned on, and I think somebody's is, be sure to turn it off because everybody can hear the TV running in the background or whatever you may be talking about. Okay, so let me get started. Again, it is being live streamed to Facebook and it's being recorded, so you can go back to Facebook or our website at any time and watch the video. Okay, June 1834, a group of Shenango Point residents met at Samuel Peterson's Inn. Probably heard of Samuel Peterson's Inn. There is a new Samuel Peterson's Inn right kind of across the street from where this used to sit. 1834, there was a meeting there, and the reason for the meeting was that the village of Binghamton just days earlier had been established. Brand new village called Binghamton. And the purpose of this meeting at the tavern was for all the important people to get together, elect officers, and come up with a plan for moving forward with the village. They elected the officers. One of the officers that was elected was the new president of Binghamton, and that was Daniel S. Dickinson. Daniel S. Dickinson, it was kind of a stepping stone. He went on to become a U.S. Senator, Lieutenant Governor of New York. Yeah, he was our first president. And just since he was there at the tavern, let's raise a toast to Daniel S. Dickinson. At that time, the village had been mapped out. This map was from 2 years later, 1836. The village had been pretty well mapped out. Main streets were established. There were mills, stores, churches, a school. And that's where Peterson's Inn was. It was built in 1809. It was right there on the corner of Front and Main Street where First Congregational Church is now. In fact, if you do some exploring down in the basement of the church, you can actually find some remnants of the original tavern that was there. There was another tavern. It was called Lewis's Tavern. It was built back in 1801. That's on the corner of Water and Court Street. And then on the corner of Court and Washington Street was Whitney's Tavern, built in 1803. So at the time of this meeting, there were 3 taverns, but there was also a brewery called Abram Quaif's Brewery There's reference of it as early as the 1820s. Very little information. There's no mention of it into the 1830s. But we know it was there, and it was probably there, I don't know, 10 years or so. It was right there on South Street on the Susquehanna River. So over the next few decades, the village grew, industry developed, immigrants arrived. British ale and German lager were in demand. A handful of local brewers answered the call. So here we go. Like Linda said, there's 4 parts to this. History of local breweries, Binghamton Goes Dry, speakeasies and raids, and finally a new generation of brewers. Okay, part 1, something brewing in Binghamton. During the 19th century, there were 7 commercial breweries here. And I'll show you a little bit on each one of them. And that little chart off to the right is a timeline to show how they were, when they were in relation to each other. So Quaif's Binghamton Brewery on South Street, 1820s to 1830s. Columbia Brewing Company on Collier Street, 1848 to 1905. Binghamton Lager Beer Brewery, 1852 to 1880. That was on Prospect Street. Binghamton Brewing Company on Wall Street. Very, very short time, turned into a distributor, but it was originally a brewing company. Parlor City Brewery, 1881 to 1920. Joseph Laurer, 1881 to 1932. And finally, Crystal Spring Brewing Company ended up on State Street for a short period of time. So you can see there were really, I don't know, 3, 4 heavy hitters there. And I'll go into some detail on each one. Again, Quaif's, there's very little information on it. There's this old advertisement from 1831 telling, offering to buy barley from local farmers. There's in one report, it was referred to as a well-known institution and a much frequented resort. Eventually the building burned. And here's a more recent map, and still 1873. But this map, I will show you where each one of these breweries was located. Again, here's Quaif's on South Street. The next one is Columbia Brewing Company. It was originally known as White and Fuller. It was the first large-scale brewery in the village of Binghamton. It was established in 1848. It was 2 decades before the city was incorporated. And the name was changed to Columbia Brewing Company in 1891. At its peak, it produced 15,000 barrels of ale a year. And if I remember right, a barrel of ale is equal to 31 gallons. So that means in a year, they made close to 500,000 gallons of beer. That's at this one brewery. In 1905, after 57 years of operation, they sold all their equipment and furniture, and it was all sold at auction. But it lasted for 57 years. And let me show you where it was located. It was on a section of Collier Street that no longer exists, and it backed up to the Shenango Canal. Buildings were demolished eventually. The canal was filled in and became State Street. And then the whole area was reconfigured as a result of urban renewal. Let me show you how that happened. This is a aerial view of that section today. All right, you can see State Street here. Collier Street stops here in Holly Street. Okay, well, in Shenango Canal used to run where State Street is today. Collier Street used to extend right on through. None of the government complex was here. And that's where Columbia Brewing Company was. There it is on the map. All right, Binghamton Lager Beer Brewery. This is an interesting one. It was built in 1852. It went under a couple different names before it was called Binghamton Lager Beer Brewery. Located at the eastern end of Mount Prospect Street, near the former site of a sanitarium, Dr. Thayer's Binghamton Water Cure. Now, Mount Prospect had a great source of natural spring water, and this Dr. Thayer decided to capitalize on it. He built a sanitarium just a couple doors up from where this brewery would be. And so he would take people in. They could partake of the mineral water and with its curative effects, and stay at his sanitarium. Didn't last very long. He finally closed up. But when the brewery opened up, a couple doors down, they decided to use that same water from the well there. So the deep well, originally used by Dr. Thayer's sanitarium, provided natural spring water for the beer. You can see a vault there. The beer was aged in huge wooden, they called them hogsheads. Each of them held 50 barrels of beer, and they stored them in an underground vault. That's the entrance to the vault, and it was maintained a constant 40-degree temperature, which is ideal for aging barrels of beer. In 1880, they wanted to increase production. They figured they would try to get more of this great water out of the well. So they dynamited the well. They dynamited it to try to get the water to the flow to increase. But instead, it drained the well and diverted the water away from the brewery. So that was the end of Binghamton Lager Beer Brewery. Closed up, the buildings were demolished. The vault stayed there. There were really two passageways underground. One was for storing beer. The other was led down to the well. And those stayed in existence until Route 17 was built. There's the old original entrances. And that's about where it was. And there it is on the map. Okay, Binghamton Brewing Company. That building is still standing. 1881, Charles Haight established the Binghamton Brewing Company at 12 Wall Street. A few months later, the business closed. All the equipment was sold at auction. So it didn't last very long. But in 1889, it reopened as a bottler and a distributor and as a saloon. So the distributing company continued operation during Prohibition by switching to non-alcoholic soft drinks until it finally closed in 1926. And this Congo was one of the non-alcoholic drinks. There is a little tang to the taste of Congo, which makes it different from wine. That's where it was. That's where the building still is. And it actually is just a couple doors down from where the Binghamton Clothing Company was, the site of the Great Fire of 1913. And in fact, that fire destroyed part of the back end of the building that the Binghamton Brewing Company was in. There it is on the map. Okay, Parlor City Brewery. located on Park Avenue in Binghamton. Anybody know where Park Avenue is? Okay, 1881, John Ersman and Jacob Schwab established the Parlor City Brewery at Park Avenue in the German settlement. Well, Park Avenue doesn't exist anymore. The name was changed to Laurel Avenue. Business began with an annual output of 4,000 barrels and eventually increased to 20,000 barrels per year. So now we've got two breweries going at the same time, putting out close to a million, about 1 million gallons of beer a year between the two of them. With the start of Prohibition in 1920, Parlor City closed. Buildings were sold to the Bates Troy Company and converted for use as a dry cleaning business. That's where it was. And it's just at the edge of the map. All right, Joseph Laurer. Extra brewed Vienna beer for family use. Okay, Joseph Laurer was the largest and most successful of Binghamton's breweries. Established in 1881, it was located right next door to Parlor City Brewery on Laurel Avenue. And they had a downtown office called Garvey's Saloon at 20 Shenango Street, right next door to my virtual background. Okay, by 1900, the business employed 20 men and produced 20,000 barrels annually. The brewery operated as a very successful brewer of beer and ale until 1918. And that's because something happened in 1918. So you look at the types of beer that they were selling: porter, India Pale Ale, cream ale, Southern Tier beer. They also sold IPA. So the beers back then weren't a whole lot different from what you would get today. Today they may be a little sweeter, they may have a little more alcohol, or maybe a lot more alcohol. But the basic beers were not that much different 100 years ago. During Prohibition, the Joseph Laurer Company produced non-alcoholic, what they called cereal beverages. And here's a definition. Laurer's cereal beverage is manufactured from pure malt and hops and is a harmless, healthful, and delightful drink. It has the old-time foam and sparkle. Its alcohol content is less than 0.5%. So the idea was to try to make something that had the same fizz and foam and basic taste of beer, but didn't have the alcohol. Nothing over 0.5% was allowed. And one of the most popular brands was known as Bingo, with a rich hop flavored tang. Okay, in 1932, at the height of Prohibition, while working under a permit to produce 0.5% alcohol content near beer, which they later allowed, federal agents raided the facility and they discovered 1,500 barrels of real beer, which was illegal. That was the end of Joseph Laurer. 1,500 barrels of the amber fluid went down the drain pipes Wednesday afternoon. So all the product and equipment was immediately destroyed. The brewery was closed. Joseph Laurer Brewing Company, the last and most successful of Binghamton's early breweries, was finished. So the original buildings were eventually demolished and replaced with a modern dry cleaning plant. That's what's there now. And there it is on the map. So what do we got? One more to go. Crystal Spring Brewing Company. Not much information on this. It first appeared in a city directory in 1894, located at 161 Washington Street, but then it moved to 182 State Street, finally closed in 1904. And that's the building that it would have been in, which is right next door to Tony Brunelli's gallery. So that's all the location of all 7 of those breweries. All right, so in the early 1900s, business was booming for Binghamton brewers. Number of taverns and saloons increased each year. In 1917, there were 180 liquor licenses issued in the city. But things were brewing in Binghamton. By the way, the population in 1917, 18 was up around 65,000, which is of Binghamton, which is right now we're at 45,000. So there were a lot of people in Binghamton drinking a lot of beer. So things were brewing in Binghamton, but it was about to change. Part 2, party's over. 2 things combined to bring about the beginning of the end of beer in the tier. Number 1, in 1917, women's suffrage was voted into law in New York State. Number 2, within months, local option elections were held in various townships to determine if the production and sale of alcoholic beverages would be outlawed. January 5th, 1918, a local option election was held in the Broome County Township of Lisle. This was the very first election in New York State where women could vote. January 5th, 1918. 6 o'clock in the morning, Florence Chauncey, she was a leader of the local dry movement, made history. She was the first in line. She stepped up to the ballot box and dropped her vote in, which made her the first woman in New York State to cast a vote in an election. End result of that election was local prohibition was overwhelmingly approved, and it was due in large part to the women's vote. 3 months later, the same thing happened in Binghamton. A local option election was held here in Binghamton with the same result. This city is voted bone dry. Women are responsible for driving license out of Binghamton. Two years later, nationwide prohibition went into effect. So nationwide prohibition was 1920. 2 years before that, Binghamton went dry. Taverns and hotels struggled to survive. Breweries went out of business or converted for production of non-alcoholic beverages and near beer. Part 3, speakeasies, bootlegs, and raids. All right, despite ongoing efforts to enforce prohibition, alcoholic beverages could easily be found. Soft drink shops, fruit stands, cigar stores, barber shops, just about any kind of business you can think of often had a supply under the counter or in a back room or down in the cellar of some alcoholic beverage. And there was all sorts of different alcoholic beverages going around. What were they drinking? Beer and whiskey from Canada. It was real easy, apparently, to get it across the border. Scranton and New York City. Homemade beer, cider and wine. Moonshine. Wood alcohol. People were dying of wood alcohol. And believe it or not, silo juice. And what silo juice was is drippings that would work their way down through silage in a silo would be captured at the bottom of the silo, and it would have alcoholic content. And I guess it was drinkable. So police raids were regular events. Many of you may know, I do the 100 years ago postings every day on Facebook. And without fail, probably, I don't know, maybe 3 times a week, there's an article about a raid. Every day there is an article about public intoxication arrests going on. There was a lot of drinking and there was a lot of stuff to drink during Prohibition. Beverages were seized, violators fined, evidence was often dumped into the river, down manholes, or onto the city dump. Enforcement of Prohibition was an ongoing losing battle. That's from 1930. This is interesting. This just came up in October in the 100 years ago news. Large quantities of liquor were being distributed from private residences because so many raids were going on. The taverns got wise and they decided to store in private residences huge volumes of alcoholic beverages, and they would just take in to the tavern what they needed. October 1920, $8,000 worth of intoxicants were found in this house on Floral Avenue. June 8th, 1920. It's a quote in the Binghamton Press. This city has gained the reputation of being one of the most wide open cities in the state as far as the sale of intoxicating beverages is concerned. It's just a short list of some of the places that were raided at that time. You can see a lot of them on Clinton Street and a whole variety of different types of businesses. Some of those buildings are still there. Main Street, Washington Street, Susquehanna. And I'll just pick this one out because it's fairly interesting. This is a house that was owned by a man and woman, Stephen and Mary Merlack. Before Prohibition, in 1916, they operated it as a hotel and tavern called the Turf Exchange. Well, in 1918, Stephen died, and at the same time, Binghamton went dry. And here, Mary has 2 young daughters that she has to raise, and she doesn't have any source of income. She decided to run it as a speakeasy. And what she did was she personally made regular drives up to Canada to get beer and whiskey, brought it back. And then she had a hidden chamber dug in the parking lot, just about where this car is. There was a hidden chamber below the parking lot with a secret passage that led to the cafe. The chamber was discovered during excavation in 2007 and still containing wooden barrels and bottles. What a cool find. And I'm sure you'll all recognize this building because it's still there. That's what it looked like in 1935, and that's what it looks like today. It's former Cyber Cafe West. Okay, so by 1930, the sources for illegal beverages in Binghamton outnumbered pre-Prohibition legal sources. Here's a statement from the Broome County Sheriff in 1933. Here in Broome County, we now have over 500 speakeasies. Before Prohibition, we had 180 licensed places. Okay, the end of Prohibition. April 1933, federal law was changed to allow production of beer containing 3.2% alcohol. And then finally, December of that year, 1933, the 18th Amendment was repealed, ending Prohibition. Part 4, happy days are here again. So new taverns opened, old taverns reopened, and after 15 years, legal beer was back in the tier. But it would be another 60 years before a local brewery would open in Binghamton. In the mid-1990s, with home brewing and craft beers gaining in popularity, the first brew pub was established in Binghamton. It was called Parlor City Brewery, opened in 1996 at West State Street. And it was advertised as the county's first brew pub. And they defined brew pub, a restaurant and tavern where beer is brewed and sold on the premises. It didn't last very long. Soon after it opened, it closed. And then another 15 years would go by before the time was right for a return of breweries to the tier. It was a little ahead of its time. And here's the new generation of brewers. All started with Water Street Brewing Company in 2012. North Brewery on Washington Avenue in Endicott, 2012. Galaxy Brewing, 2013. Farmhouse Brewery in Owego, 2013. Binghamton Brewing Company, originally on Avenue B, Johnson City, in the process of moving now, 2014. And Beer Tree, 2017. Say just a few words about each of those. Water Street Brewing Company went into a building that was built in 1914, and it was the People's Theater. It was a silent movie house. It existed as a silent movie house from the day it opened, 1914, until 1930, when talkies came out and they just didn't make the transition to the newer technology. Admission was 5 cents and the theater seated 400. Now, if you've ever been in Water Street Brewing Company, just next time you're there, imagine 400 people being crammed into that place to watch a movie. It had to be pretty tight. Ticket booth was located in the center of the building with entrances on either side. There's a little superimposed picture. And the upper floors of the building were occupied by the Binghamton Overall Company. After it closed as a movie house, it opened up as an indoor miniature golf course and later a dance palace and tavern. Now, I know indoor miniature golf course sounds a little goofy, but at the time, it was the latest craze. There were a lot of indoor golf courses here in Binghamton. All right, the North Brewery. What's historic about that? Well, the building was built in 1896. It was originally home to Wilcox Bookshop and Romas Billiard Hall. Beginning in the 1940s, Elks Bake Shop would occupy the building for more than 55 years. Custard-filled cakes were a specialty at the bake shop, and there's the cake foreman holding a custard-filled cake right there. But unfortunately, those custard-filled cakes were responsible for poisoning 100 customers in 1969 with salmonella. So there were a lot of lawsuits that came out of that. I guess they used tainted eggs. But the company survived and went on. Galaxy Brewing Company. Built in 1892, the building was home to Sawyer's Millinery Shop, also home to this Dr. Woodley, known as the Specialist. It looks like he could cure just about anything that ailed you. Later, it was a candy store, Kresge's, and Saul Stern's Menswear. Finally, it was connected to a building at 157 Washington Street to form Phil's Gift Shop. So the back of it kind of worked its way around. It's like an L shape and connected to this building on Washington Street. And the historic thing about that is upstairs in that building on Washington Street is a fully intact fraternal lodge room of the Improved Order of Red Men. Still up there. That picture was taken just not too long ago, as a matter of fact. The organization left in the 1920s, and that room it was used for storage for many years, but everything was pretty much left intact. And there is evidence that the room served as a speakeasy during Prohibition. Digging around in the one of the back rooms, we found a door with a little secret a sliding peephole on it. And their rumor has it that it was a speakeasy during Prohibition. Farmhouse Brewery on Lake Street in Owego. This building was built in the 1920s, served as a variety store, a sports shop, and art gallery. In the 1970s, it was home to the Owego Penny Saver. Located on Lake Street in the Owego Central Historic District, it's listed on the National Register of Historic Places as of 1980, the district was. Binghamton Brewing Company, originally located at 15 Avenue B in Johnson City. The building was constructed in 1916 by Endicott Johnson to serve as its fire prevention department. That's a then shot, 1918. The upper floor was converted to a temporary hospital for victims of the Spanish influenza pandemic in 1918. And there's a now shot. So after sitting vacant for several years, the building was renovated in 2014 and opened as Binghamton Brewing Company. As it turns out, Binghamton Brewing Company just left that building and is in the process of moving to a new facility. 2020, the company relocated to the Century Building in Johnson City. Building was built in 1923 as a shoe manufacturing plant of Endicott Johnson. And the Binghamton Brewing Company is in this section right here. And finally, Beer Tree Brewing Company. This building was built in 2016, so there's really not a whole lot of historical significance to the building, but there's a lot of historical significance to the property that it's sitting on and next to. In 1876, it was farmland of Jesse Shepherdson and his family, bordered on each side by history. Bordered on the east by State Route 369, which is the former site of the Shenango Canal, which opened in 1837, brought goods, people, and commerce to the southern tier during the mid-19th century. And then on the north, it's bordered by property of the Hull family. Hull family were manufacturers of cigars. The Hull Grumman Cigar Company is where Lost Dog Cafe is right now. George Hull was also the perpetrator of the Great Cardiff Giant hoax of 1869. And I know everybody's heard of the Cardiff Giant hoax of 1869. There's a photo of it being excavated. Now, I don't want to give you the impression that the giant was ever on the property there. It wasn't anywhere near it. But the man that came up with the idea was on that property. The other, there's the old map, 1876 map, showing the current location of Beer Tree. Shenango River on the left, Shenango Canal on the right. And there's Hull's property. The other thing that's happening with Beer Tree is, you've probably all seen it in the news, they're opening up a new facility at Oakdale Mall in the old Sears store. It's called Factory by Beer Tree Brew. Huge facility, restaurant on the second floor, a brewery on the first floor. Beautiful patio here. And there's a little history associated with that. It's located at the former site of Bigler's Mill. Bigler's Mill was a mill that manufactured the 60-foot-long solid oak keel of the 1862 ironclad Civil War ship, the USS Monitor. That, if you were to, right at the entrance from the mall into the new facility, the new Beer Tree facility, there's a pedestal by the door, and this historical marker is on the pedestal. Okay, one more, and I gotta go to borrow a line from one of the local brew pubs. 2 centuries of beer in the tier. 200 years ago, Binghamton's earliest residents established commercial brewing in the city. Today, a new generation of local brewers revives the art and carries on the rich heritage of those who came before. So, thank you. Thank you very much. We hope you enjoyed the virtual pub crawl. Thank you for joining us. And let me just add something here. Broome County Historical Society, this is a program of the Broome County Historical Society. Our mission for over 100 years, collecting, interpreting, and preserving the history of Broome County, New York. Please visit our website and follow us on Facebook. In fact, that's how you find out about more of these interesting virtual programs that as they come up. They'll be on our website and Facebook. So thank you again.